I had a dog who hung out with me while I was on campus. So, I'm speaking about a bunch of personal things because I have a bunch of friends in the audience. Those of you who I don't know as well, please bear with me for a second, but I had a 100-pound wolf that would hang out on campus with me named Zeus. That my kids know an awful lot about Zeus. And he would go into my classroom, and about this point in the lecture, he would be walking out the door to go lay in the hallway. But, it's funny because I come back here and everybody always is very kind and they say great things about Zeus because he was just one of those, just special parts of life. He would brighten up the day, brighten up the room. If you were feeling stressed out about that exam or whatever, you look at him and everybody just all of a sudden got a calm look on their face and then they went back to being stressed out. It was kind of funny. So everybody says, boy, wouldn't it be fun to have Zeus here? And I say, yeah, but I have 3 little guys now and I have a little piece of Zeus in each one of them, I think. So it's good to have them here. And then finally, Milena, thanks for joining me, my mother-in-law. I will say, I have no mother-in-law jokes. Milena and I have gotten along since I was here at Case. Milena and her husband Joseph ran an overhead door business. And they were kind enough to give me a summer job while I was trying to woo their daughter. While I was working hard as an engineering student. So they were nice enough to not only give me a job, but then accept a non-Slovenian into the family. So far, I hope they haven't regretted that decision. So thanks for being here. Well, look, I wanted to do a couple things today because it's entrepreneurship, and because I come from Wall Street, I figured it probably made a little bit of sense to talk a little bit about private equity and really bringing capital to entrepreneurship because that is required. So I'll take a little bit of time, if it's okay, to walk through my perspective on private equity. And I know from talking to folks who've been around the past day and a half that you've heard from venture capitalists, you've heard from people who have gathered resources from the operating side. I come at it from a different perspective. So if I can take you through a couple of slides that'll help me in the discussion, at least give you some visuals on it. I'll go through that, and then we'll talk a little about entrepreneurship outcomes. So let's kick that off. Well, first of all, entrepreneurship does require capital and lots of it. Now, private equity, which is the industry that I'm in, it's in 2 forms. There's venture capital, and that's the sexy part of private equity. Everybody thinks about coming up with a germ of an idea and putting hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars behind it and growing those ideas into reality. And I think you heard from at least one speaker yesterday, and probably a couple on the receiving end, of what goes on in private equity in the venture capital world. I focus on buyouts. So the entrepreneurship and capital that I bring is really to large, mature businesses. Now, there's a lot of discussion today about jobs. Fundamentally, I think, how do jobs get created? Jobs get created because somebody decides to go out, has resources, has capital they're going to invest to go make money. And I'm not going to apologize for that because that's a key driver for the economy. People decide they want to make money, therefore they go out and they hire people to work for them to make money. So that is a fundamental purpose of commerce. Once in a while, I feel like, at least in these days, you have to apologize for that being a driver in what you do. Look, what I do in life is sitting right in front of me. That's why I'm here. What I do in my job is I invest money to make money, and that's the purpose of it. Now, the noble part of that is it does create jobs, but you need capital to create jobs, and that's the perspective I have on it. So if we can switch a couple of slides. So what do I do for a living? Go ahead, next. I sit inside Goldman Sachs. This is just to remind me, Goldman Sachs is a big firm with multiple areas, from investment management to investment banking to the commodities and currencies and equities. What we don't do, we don't have retail banking. You can't go up and open an account at Goldman Sachs. We don't have branches on the street corner. Some people say we should, or we could have, or whatever. We just don't do that. We do a lot of other things in investment banking, and I sit within the merchant banking division. And the merchant banking division is where we use our own capital and other people's capital to find ways to invest in businesses. And so I sit within the principal investment area on the far side, and I'll tell you a little bit about what that is. We can go to the next slide. Forget about it, it's an eye chart. This is just meant to show that over the series of years, we've raised a lot of capital to invest in businesses. And each one of those little green squares are funds that we've raised. So I joined Goldman Sachs in 1998. Since that time, we've raised $100 billion of capital that we then use to turn and invest in businesses. And some part of that I invest in large cap buyouts, which is what I do, and that's buying mature companies. Of that $100 billion that we gather, about 35 billion of that comes from Goldman Sachs. We take about almost $30 billion is Goldman Sachs money that's been invested into those funds, and another $5 or $6 billion are people like me who put money into our funds, so that we all have investments in our funds, the firm has investments in our funds, and our clients invest capital. And what they do is they'll give us a pool of capital to turn around and make investments in other people's businesses. So that's what I do for a living. I invest in companies through a series of funds. Next slide, please. The current private equity opportunity, the types of investing that we do are buyouts, and that's where we're just essentially going in and buying an existing company. And I'm happy to say I've recently signed an agreement to purchase a local company, and that's a company out of Canton, Ohio, called Keynote. And that's a good example of the kind of work that we do. Keynote is a great business. It was formed 20 years ago by two entrepreneurs who are the CEO and CFO of the company. And they've grown that company to a pretty meaningful sized business today. They make about $100 million of earnings. So it's a big company. They have about 5,000 employees. They run about 2,500 to 3,000 fuel trucks across North America. So what they do is they take gasoline from the terminal endpoint to a service station, and they just run those trucks back and forth. So terrific business, local, so it's kind of nice, timely. I was there this morning meeting with the guys before coming over here. But what I'll do in my job is we're investing a tremendous amount of money here. We'll invest about $500 million in equity. We'll borrow money from some of my friends, perhaps sitting in the audience here. We have a couple of bankers in the audience. We'll borrow a little bit of money to close that transaction. And then our intention with a business like that is we buy a company that's it's a very good business with a long track record, and our hope is to double or triple the size of that company in about 5 years. So that's nominally what I do. I think about the world as investing in companies for 5 years, plus or minus whatever it takes. And that's a good example of that. So our hope, and why we do this, why I do this in my job, is that we're going to make a lot of money on that investment. We're going to invest that money. We're going to invest more money in that company. We're going to grow them from where they are today. There's a lot of growth opportunity in a business like that for us to go into Canada, for us to go into other end markets. From fuel, you go into food and chemicals and other things. And it's all about growth, and it's all about improving that business. And we would hope to make money off of that investment. And then at some point, we'll either sell that company to somebody else, or we'll take that company public, and public investors will buy into it. But that gives you a perspective on what we do. And there are all different types of ways to make investments. There's growth capital. There's investments in public companies that need additional capital because they want to buy another business and merge it in with theirs. And we can show up and invest money to give a management team and board the ability to go out and do what they think is necessary to make their business successful. So we provide capital to do that. Next slide, please. So that's kind of what I do for a living within Goldman Sachs. Let's talk a little bit about leveraged buyouts, because you hear LBOs or leveraged buyouts. I thought it might make sense to do a quick primer. Next slide, please. Go ahead. I didn't know this was a bullet. Okay. A leveraged buyout is the acquisition of a company. What we end up doing is the buyer, somebody like me, will raise debt and equity, or in our case, we bring all of our equity to the table, and then we do borrow some money to buy the company, to acquire an existing business. Typically, we'll put 30 or 40% of the capital required. If it's $1 billion company, we'll invest $300, $400 million of our own money, and then we'll go to people like our friends from KeyBank here and borrow money on top of that to buy that company. And what we hope to do is really improve the business. Now, 20, 30 years ago, leveraged buyouts were typically financial engineering exercises where you would go in, lever the company up, and you're trying to take advantage of undervalued assets within a company. In our case, the philosophy we have going into these businesses is we do borrow money to buy them, but the way we make money is that we improve these businesses in some way. We may improve these businesses by buying other companies and folding them in. We may improve these businesses by investing in new technologies to grow the companies. We may improve these businesses in a wide variety of ways, but for us to do well, we have to improve these businesses.